in the end, these are our guys. They're all tough, they're all physical, they love football, and they'll protect the quarterback, and they'll be able to get some movement for us in the running game.
He has to be on everybody's list. I mean, the guy makes plays short, long, medium, it doesn't matter. Good with the ball in his hands.
No one's doing special teams, Coach, so I'm excited about this. We are going to get some special teams names out there. Welcome to Week 9 of Coach. I'm Patricia. We have Mike Lombardi with us here and Coach Bill Belichick. And we're at that halfway point of the season. And you know what that's time for? It's time to start talking about who's caught our eye. And Coach, we're going to dive in. We're going to do a mid-season All-Belichick team.
This is a team that we spent a lot of time on. And we've looked at the mid-season evaluations, taking into consideration some injury situations. Some guys have had very productive seasons at this point in time, and so that's what we evaluated it on. We focused the offense on 11 and 12 personnel because that's what most teams in the NFL run. So we have really 12 players there, be it 11 or 12. That's reflected on the defensive side of the ball with base defense and a nickel defense, so an outside linebacker versus a nickel corner. So that's kind of how the team was put together. There's a big emphasis on the offensive tackle and the defensive end outside linebacker position. That's where most of the good players are on both sides of the ball, and those matchups are the most critical matchups on the field. So there's a lot of emphasis on that. There's also a heavy emphasis on three-down players. Not to take anything away from a very productive first or third down player, but we're putting more emphasis on players that can play all three downs. And so in addition, we'll talk about our captains who provide leadership, and we'll also talk about special teams later in the segment. But the offense and the defense will kind of play off each other in this segment. And looking forward to getting started to talk about these guys. A lot of good football players here. We couldn't get them all on, but we got the ones we feel like we're the best.
Slings in the back of the end zone. Touchdown! Isaiah Likely. Oh, the King is having a night.
He just big boyed him down the sideline.
He breaks free. He's going to go! Touchdown!
Caught Jamar Chase. Breaks the tackle.
See ya! And it is caught! Touchdown!
Wide open, George Kittle.
Well, Michael, let's start on offense. It always starts with the quarterback, other than the center who touches the ball on every play. Quarterback handles the ball on almost every play, too. So let's go to the quarterback position.
And we're seeing some really incredible performances so far this year from quarterbacks. Lamar Jackson has been dynamic for Baltimore, throwing and running. You know, we often think of him as a quarterback that likes to one look and go. But as Jim Schwartz, who played against him last week, said, the defensive coordinator of the Browns, he's no longer that. He's really good from the pocket, making all the throws, and this offense is explosive. I don't think Jared Goff's thrown more than 15 incompletions over the last 4 weeks. He's been dynamic. And Patrick Mahomes may not be having a typical Patrick Mahomes year, but there's always 2 or 3 plays that Patrick Mahomes makes in a game. The 51-yard run against the Raiders that you say, wow, how did that happen? It's really impressive. Josh Allen's not on our list. He certainly has had a good year. 1 interceptions all year. He's cut down his turnovers, which has been huge. But I think these 3 guys have really played at a high level for their teams and have made their teams really good.
It would be hard to argue with any of these guys. Where do we end up here, Michael?
Well, we ended up with the guy that have 2 plays in a huddle every time he plays and makes a play. It's the play that they called, and then when the play breaks down, he makes another play. It's called Lamar Jackson, and I think he's really hard to defend. I watched him last week against Cleveland, and if it was 2-hand touch, I'm not sure the Browns would have got him on the ground. He was really remarkable. He escaped like Harry Houdini. But I think what happens with Lamar is you can't game plan for him. You know, you talk about it all the time. You both do. Rush lanes, rush lanes, rush lanes. But somehow he breaks down the rush lane and he makes an incredible play. I mean, he hit Bateman right in the face mask. The kid couldn't catch the ball, and that would have been a turning point in the game. He's done some unique things, and I think what I like about Lamar more than everything, he's raised his level of play. He's an MVP twice, but he's improved himself over the course of time.
Sure has. He's done a better job getting his eyes downfield. He's breaking a lot of tackles, not just outrunning people. Come a long way from some people who thought he should play receiver in the NFL.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. Remember that? I mean, that poor kid had to sit in the green room until 31 picks got played. I mean, it was just really unbelievable. And credit the Ravens for trading back into the first round to get him. I think Steve Bisciotti, the owner, deserves a ton of credit for that because he pushed that move for them to make it, and they did, and they were able to get their franchise quarterback.
And I think one of the biggest things that he has done, his touchdown interception ratio is one of the tops in the leagues. And as we know at the quarterback position, you got to take care of the ball. That's what he's really tried to do. I think every time this guy's on the field, if you're a defensive coach, you're holding your breath that he just doesn't do something to break you.
If you're a fan for the other team, you're holding on too.
Yeah, I mean, look, the last play of the Cleveland game, everybody was holding their breath. He's throwing the ball in the end zone. He's scrambling around, and Cleveland Brown fans thought they had that game won, and they did. But you're holding your breath the entire time. But look, he's got the second half of the season. They had a tough loss against Cleveland. They lost the game against the Raiders. They gave up a ton of points. But I think this team's improving. Their offensive line has gotten better. But Lamar has been the difference to me in the way he's played this year. He reminds me when he came out of Louisville, he wasn't just a runner. He could throw it in Bobby Petrino's offense, and I think you're seeing more of that now.
He's got a pretty good guy in the backfield with him, too. How about these running backs, Matt?
Yeah, well, the quarterback, obviously number one, but we got to put somebody back there with him. So we'll start with the running back position. Really, we whittled it down to two guys. Derrick Henry, number one, back in the backfield with Lamar, but also Saquon Barkley, another guy that's had an unbelievable season so far. These were kind of the top two guys that we narrowed it down. And when we looked at it, Coach, some early down positives for both of them. But one of these guys has really a little bit more three-down value.
It's interesting, too. Both players came from other teams.
That's right, yeah.
And so Henry left Tennessee, Saquon left the Giants, and ended up with their new teams. And sure, it looks like a good move for both players and both teams. These guys have had fantastic first half of the season.
Yeah, and they both break tackles, and they're both really hard to get on the ground. And I think, to me, they both drive the offense. I know we talked about Lamar being better in the passing game, but really having somebody he could turn around to and close the game and score touchdowns rushing really makes a difference for the Ravens. And then Barkley, to me, when they went to the Super Bowl 2 years ago and lost to Kansas City, Miles Sanders was really their good player. They had two backs that averaged over 6 yards a carry, and Barkley's given them that toughness, that physicality inside, and he could also make plays in the passing game, Matt.
He really can. He's dynamic, and for all of those reasons, for our running back there, we went with Barkley. I think that's a dynamic player that, again, great move by Philly. When you can sign a great player, also maybe weaken the division a little bit when that happens, but you need to be prepared for him. First down, second down, that third down value, and he's put some games away too in the fourth quarter. Just like Derrick Henry, who runs really hard and it's real difficult to tackle. Barkley's in the same category.
Right. Well, another key position is that tight end position, and this is an interesting spot because it plays off the three receiver sets, two tight ends, three receivers. What do teams want to do? And the answer is it's a little bit of both. So Kittle is our main tight end. Everybody feels like this guy's had a tremendous year and just adds the running game to San Francisco. A lot of times on the backside of a 3-by-0 formation and makes the block at a point of attack. He gets the running game going, converts on third down, scores in the red area. But when you get to the second tight end, you have Trey McBride, who's a similar but lesser version of Kittle, could play on all three downs, good blocker, good receiver. Bowers, who's been a great receiver in the league in his short time this year, he's a rookie, has had tremendous production in the passing game. He would be more of the passing tight end. So McBride and Bowers kind of play off of each other here in that second tight end role. So we've included both of them.
Yeah, and these two guys, McBride and Kittle, are old school tight ends when we used to line up with just one tight end in the league. And so he can do both. He can run and catch. And I thought Kittle, playing off of an injury last week against the Cowboys, was really running at a high level, and his hands are really good. He's made great catches in the end zone. But he drives their running game, Matt. I mean, he's the reason they're so effective, and his effort's so good. I think he's just been so impressive this year.
The 49ers do an excellent job of changing up the edge blocking for this, zone-style offensive run game that they use, and Kittle is the guy. They're not bringing in another tight end to do those difficult blocks. You see him crack, you see him move, you see him motion, and they just can put him in those difficult situations. He's a smart player. He's tough. He's old school. He's got his hair flying around. He ran last week, getting away. It was a short pass, and he just took off. I saw the explosive gear.
Yeah, me too.
That was impressive. I think he just continually just dominates that position.
Yeah, really does. And so when we talk about Bowers, talk about a receiving tight end who's the top of the league in receiving. But We have our receivers, too.
When you look at this receiver group, there's so many guys to choose from. We went with 3 receivers because we needed an inside receiver. We went with an X, a Z, and what we would call an F. And so when we look at this, Justin Jefferson, he has to be on everybody's list. I mean, the guy makes plays short, long, medium, it doesn't matter. Good with the ball in his hands. I mean, some guys we know are not always great runners, but the guys we put on this list can make yak yards as well. Chase, he started off the season, he was hurt, he's come back, he's really progressed. Chris Godwin, unfortunately last week had a season-ending injury, so he can't be on the team. CeeDee Lamb, another guy that plays in the slot, hard to cover one-on-one. And I think one of the things we looked for in this was somebody who could win one-on-one on third down. That's critical, right? Everybody talks about having a number one receiver, but if you can't win on third down against the top corner one-on-one, you're really not a number one receiver. Nico Collins has had a great year, but he's been on IR the last 3 weeks. And Terry McLaurin has found himself with Jaden Daniels throwing him the deep ball. He's been great. So we've got really 6 really good players here, and we're going to whittle it down to 3, Matt.
We always talk about, if you play wide receiver, the 2 main things: get open, catch the ball. And then if you really can run with it, that's actually a bonus.
Big plus.
One of the things about these guys is some of these guys, they're out there blocking. You see some of the run game. They're tough. They're physical. They're aggressive. That's what we're looking for on our team. Not only this position that can make plays, guys that go out, do their job. They do it every single play. It's exciting when you get wide receivers with this level of talent. We can only pick a couple.
Of the 6 receivers, they've all had great seasons, but we narrowed it down to 2, an X and a Z receiver, starting off with the Z receiver, Justin Jefferson, who really needs no praise further from us. I mean, the guy's just dynamic on tape. He has every defensive coordinator worried about him each week, and Kevin O'Connell does a great job of, as you said, Coach, moving him around and making sure that he has always the right matchup.
We see Justin Jefferson line up everywhere. I think the offense is really predicated around moving him around. The other receivers have to be able to adjust to him.
And then the same thing with Jamar Chase. I mean, Joe Burrow really relies on him to make critical plays at critical times. To me, he's always in balance. He comes down with the football and makes explosive plays, which makes this Bengal offense tough to defend. Those 2 guys really are the top of the All-Belichick team here at the receiver position. So for all those, we also have to go to the other positions here, the inside receiver, Coach.
Where we have Jefferson and Chase as the receivers, Kittle as the tight end, and then who's the next guy? We want it to be between Lamb at receiver and McBride or Bowers at tight end, depending on whether you're looking for more of a blocking or receiving tight end. Juszczyk and Ricard are great players. Love to have them on our team. They just don't have the production that these other 3 players have in the passing game and overall offensively, the number of plays that they play. Ricard's in the 30% range. Juszczyk's around 50%. These guys are out there a lot more than that. So we've gone with this group as our next 11-12 combination personnel grouping over the fullbacks.
Yeah, and then somebody's got to do the blocking, right, Matt? I mean, somebody's got to handle this, and there's nothing better than the big nasties. I mean, we really got to get this offensive line going. And we favor the tackle position over any other position in the National Football League. And one thing we've learned so far this season, if you lose your tackle, Darrisaw of Minnesota's out. We know how hard it is to cover from a left tackle. Orlando Brown in Cincinnati, he's out. So to me, this has really been a position. So we went heavy on the tackle position because there's so many good tackles. They're left on an island, as you mentioned earlier in the segment. They're blocking one-on-one. And at left tackle, we picked Tristan Wirfs from Tampa Bay, who has had an outstanding season. He's coming back from an injury, but he hasn't missed a beat, Coach.
Yeah, he's done a great job for him. And there's several other good left tackles in the league. Ronnie Stanley, is having a really good year. These guys that can play tackle are such an advantage for the offense where you don't have to chip and slam the outside rushers and things like that. They can just get out into the pattern. These guys are hard to find because they're blocking the best defensive players on the field, these defensive ends. We'll get into them later.
These are kind of our starting 5 here that we've got highlighted. But the tackle position, Mike, as you mentioned, the left tackle position, Coach, the right tackle, there's some really good players over there, too. Sewell coming from Detroit, probably one of the best players in the league. Hard to kind of keep him off the field. But even Lane Johnson, another really good right tackle. tackle for Philadelphia. So going tackle heavy is always good. Jordan Mailata, who's also at Philadelphia. We're going to need a swing guy in there at some point. Those guys that can play on both sides. So making sure that we're heavy there. That's where the best pass rushers are too. Usually on the field, those guys out on the edge, where you're probably by yourself, you can chip a little bit. But if we can get good tackles and not have to give that extra help to those guys blocking those edge rushers, now we can get more guys out in the pattern. So that tackle position, really a priority.
There's not many tackles that have trick plays put in the offense for him, and Penny Sewell's a unique guy. Let's go inside. Joel Bitonio of Cleveland. He's been a very good player for a long time. Creed Humphrey from Kansas City and Chris Lindstrom from Atlanta. One thing we all want in our offensive line is a firm pocket. There's nothing that gives a quarterback more problems than a defensive tackle who gets into the paint, and these three have been very good at keeping that pocket firm, Coach.
Yeah, and they're all our kind of guys, too. And there's a lot of good interior linemen, but, Bitonio's really a tough, strong guy. He had to even go up and play left tackle earlier in the year. It shows you how unselfish. That's not his position. But he went out there and was competitive playing left tackle. Now he's back at guard where he belongs. Creed Humphrey has done a great job for Kansas City, really solidified the middle of that offensive line and provides a firm pocket there. The right guard, Chris Lindstrom, is one of the most physical and aggressive players in the league. Zach Martin's a really good right guard, too. Tooney at left guard, another good interior player. But in the end, these are our guys. They're all tough. They're all physical. They love football, and they'll protect the quarterback, and they'll be able to get some movement for us in the running game.
Yeah, great conversations. Even Frank Ragnow, we talked about him being in the center position. Another guy, I think he's playing with a torn pec right now, and he's still out there. And to the point of offensive linemen, you got to be available, you got to be tough, and you got to be on the field. So just Frank playing through that injury shows his toughness. He's a smart football player. He can make the mic points and help, with the protection direction. So a lot of really great names here to talk through. Linderbaum's another guy. These are 5 tough guys that we want out to really set the tone. But one of them really kind of stands out over everyone else. And, we pick Sewell as kind of our leader of the front in the offensive line to set the tone for our team and kind of just make sure that unit is the identity of what we're looking for.
Yeah, people talk about how important it is to have a left tackle to block the edge rushers over there. There's a lot of good rushers on the right side. Aiden Hutchinson, of course, is injured, unfortunately. Boza, TJ Watt. There's a lot of good guys on the right side, too. So those right tackles are critical just as much as the left tackle. Sewell's the best offensive lineman in the league in my book.
Yeah, I could watch tape and not really keep my eyes off of Sewell. He's so dynamic. He gets movement. He's so athletic. His uniform never gets dirty. To me, he passes the old grass test, which is if an offensive lineman comes out of the game with a clean uniform, he's a really good offensive lineman. He's never on the ground. And I think Sewell is exactly what the All-Belichick team stands for: tough, dependable, and unselfish. He does everything for his team. He could play left tackle, but he plays right tackle for them. I just think he's tremendous.
Well, there we have it. There's our offensive unit. Pretty good group with some flexibility on the personnel side of it. We're going to turn to the defense now and see what things look like over there.
Let's get to the other side of the ball here. Let's talk some defense.
This is what you guys really will figure this one out.
Michael, let's flip it over to the defensive side of the ball. The defensive end outside linebacker position is probably the best and deepest position on the defense. So let's start there.
Yeah, these guys are game changers, and we've got 4 really great prospects. Not only are they great prospects in terms of making the All-Belichick team, but they're also guys that play down and down. They play 3 downs. I mean, they're not situational rushers. They don't come in on passing downs or against 11 personnel. They play all the games. Let's start with Aiden Hutchinson, who unfortunately isn't on our team because he got hurt. He would have been. He was having that kind of season. He really was playing well. Will Anderson, I think, has really improved himself from college to pro, playing alongside the other side of Danielle Hunter. He's been really good. Not only is he a speed rusher, but he's able to power the tackles back, and he's one of those guys you better make sure you chip or you better have somebody else helping you out there on that edge. So I think, he's been really good. And then we go to Myles Garrett, who, what can you say about Myles Garrett? I mean, every offensive coordinator is worried about him. You've got a game plan against him. They do a great job. He can play the run. He runs to the football. He's dynamic. Now we'll go to the other side. Now we're going to go against the right tackles. Nick Bosa goes against mostly the right tackles. We'll call him the left defensive end. And I think, to me, what stands out so much is his ability to play down after down at a high level of intensity. He doesn't get tired. He rarely comes out of the game. I think he's at 86% of the plays for the 49ers. And I think that's really speaks a lot about how talented this guy is. And then Jonathan Grenard, who played with Will Anderson last year, signed with Minnesota this year, has been dynamic as well. And with Brian Flores' blitz package, his athleticism on the edge has been really impressive. And, you know, you go against the right tackle with his speed and his athleticism, but really he can power too. Bosa can power. You know, Myles Garrett can power. All these guys can power, which is essentially what we want. The last thing we don't want from these guys is to run past the quarterback, Coach.
Yeah, we definitely don't want that. This position has so much depth. I mean, we're not even talking about guys who are great players like Burns, Max Crosby. Those are game plan players too, but we've selected our top 4 and plus Hutchinson, of course, and you know, it's a pretty strong group.
And our best guy is Myles Garrett.
Yeah,
I mean,
clearly.
Everybody worried about him. I mean, he's disruptive. He gets to the quarterback. You know, he creates pressures. Everybody gets so caught up, Matt, with sacks, but pressures are what creates the turnovers, right? The Giants lead the league in sacks, but they don't have an interception, right? So it's good to get sacks, but we want those pressures, and Myles Garrett is dynamic in that.
When you're one of our defensive ends, everybody's got to account for you. You're a Tuesday player. The offenses are game plan. So they may not have some of the sack numbers, Myles Garrett. That's because he's getting a lot of attention from the other team. It's going to be hard to give him all the attention when you got Bosa on the other side or Will Anderson comes in. Certainly, we're going to have enough up front to get some one-on-one pass rushes for these guys, and they would have a lot of production.
Well, when you have good outside rushers, that really helps the inside rushers, especially those guys that can power the pocket.
Yeah, let's talk the defensive tackles here. We love the inside pass rush. I think one of the things that we want to be able to do is crush that pocket, push the middle, not give them any depth and width to the pocket. It's going to start inside. You can't start the defensive tackle group without mentioning Dexter Lawrence. I mean, he was first on the list that we talked about. He's big, he's long, he's dynamic. We talked about Zach Allen, who I think is another guy who's been so disruptive for that Denver defense. He's one of the guys I think has just really emerged this year. Cam Hayward, certainly a veteran player that
just keeps on going.
Keeps going. I mean, 35 years young, playing the position, dominating, also a great leader. And Chris Jones. I mean, you cannot talk about inside defensive play without talking about Chris Jones. So really hard decision. We went a little bit heavy at the defensive end, outside pass rush position. So really only got to 2 of them on the team. Dexter Lawrence and Zach Allen were the top 2, with really Dexter Lawrence being our top guy here inside. He's so dynamic. We saw him push the middle of the pocket the other night. He's one of those just unbelievably disruptive players.
He's having a tremendous year, literally unblockable. His sack and pressure numbers are off the charts. The only interception the Giants had all year was when he deflected the pass and they caught it. So he's part of their pass defense, part of their pass rush. And a lot of the yards the Giants have given up in the running game have come outside. It's tough running the ball inside against Lawrence. So, yeah, he's our guy inside.
He'd be one of those guys, Coach. I know he's going to be in your office during the course of the week saying, hey, what else can I do? You want me to put me on offense? You know, we played around with some of those defensive guys. I think he can do anything. It looks like he's athletic.
If you're going to give the ball to some offensive lineman, I think I might give the ball to Dexter Lawrence. Who wants to tackle this big guy, right?
No, nobody. So let's go to the outside linebacker position, which is so critical, especially against 12 personnel. And I think the conversation really starts with T.J. Watt. T.J. does a tremendous job of pass rushing off the edge, but he's also very good at knocking the ball off. He causes fumbles. He recovers fumbles. He's got great awareness. Kyle Van Noy is having a terrific year for the Ravens, both rushing a passer, playing the run. He's a very, very instinctive player. And Van Ginkel, who was at Miami, came up to Minnesota, is having a good year too, returning interceptions for touchdowns, rushing off the edge. But these guys are good situational players, especially against 12 personnel where you get that extra tight end in the field. Not that they can't rush on 11, I'm not saying that, but these guys are really valuable players in their roles against certain types of offense. So love these guys. In the end, Watt's our guy.
Yeah, smart, tough, good fundamentals, dependable. The outside linebacker group. This guy's a force to be reckoned with.
You know the amazing thing about Watt, when I watch Watt, he has one move. One move. It's all he does, and it's every time. It's it's coming, but you can't stop it. That's the mark of a great player.
All right, well, man, let's transition now to your favorite position, the inside linebackers. Pretty good players here.
Great players here. Love the linebacker positions, outside, inside. But the inside, as we know, Coach, that's the heart and soul of the defense. That's the quarterback of the defense. We got to make checks, adjustments. We got to have smart football players here, guys that can get the front to do what they need them to do, guys that can handle the coverage communication. We talked about 3 really good ones. We're going to put 2 on the field to start. Actually talked about a 4th, too, with Luvu at Washington.
He's worth talking about.
He's definitely worth talking about. Versatile player. But really, it was the 3 guys we kind of honed in on was Roquan Smith, Fred Warner, and Zaire Franklin, another really productive player.
Yep.
All 3 guys really good in their schemes. They play with high energy. They're leaders out on the football field. We picked 2. We're going to go with Roquan Smith and really one of my favorite players in the NFL, Fred Warner. He'd be our guy to really lead the defense, be the signal caller, get into the huddle, give that communication. He turns the ball over. This guy is a force. He's dynamic. He's a lot of fun to watch, and I think he just carries that defense, that attitude that you're looking for out there. You need the guy in front of the huddle that's calling the signals to set the tone. This guy sets the tone.
He sets the tone. He backs it up. Interceptions, forced fumbles, tackles for loss, and making big plays at key points in the game. No, he does a great job.
With great leadership skills.
Yeah,
too.
absolutely.
I mean, you could see the players gravitate around him, and he is the man in the locker room. I mean, he controls the defense on and off the field.
Yeah, this guy's really impressive. Well, let's transition from the front 7 to the secondary. Michael, I don't know who we need back there in the secondary. With this front 7, they're not going to have much time to throw or run.
No, they're not going to have much time at all. But we need some corners. We need some safeties. And you talked about it. You know, the nickel corner is its position unto itself. It goes back to the great Buddy Parker when he was at the Detroit Lions, who invented the star position, star and port, which is the nickel's corner in defense. And Buddy was well ahead of his time to come up with that concept, because back in the 40s when he was coaching, there wasn't 3 receivers. No. But they wanted a big inside corner that could handle it, and we think Marlon Humphrey, who's up here on the screen, does a really good job. But let's start with Denzel Ward, who's been a dynamic player for the Cleveland Browns.
Yes.
He unfortunately, he keeps suffering from concussions, and we hope he can play and hope he can come back or whatever he decides to do. But he is a really good cover corner. He can take the best receiver out of the game. Patrick Surtain.
And he's played against a lot of good players already this year.
And Jim Schwartz does a good job of matching him up on different
He's going to
people.
play man coverage.
And, you know, these guys can play right or left. I think that's a little bit of an underrated conversation that no one has, is sometimes guys only want to play one side of the field or the other. You know, they see the game out of that one eye that they play out of. Patrick Surtain's another guy who's been really good. We know Denver's defense is good. We got Zach Allen already on our team, but Surtain's been really good. He was hurt last week. He came back. But again, he can take the best receiver out. Marlon Humphreys, to me, is a really unique player, because when he plays in the slot, he's a really good. He's got 4 interceptions in there. He makes a lot of plays on the ball. He's not quite as effective on the outside, but when he's inside, he's a really good tackler, which you have to have as a nickel corner. I think he's really good. We talked about Jalen Johnson. He's not on the list. He's playing really well for the Chicago Bears, but he quite didn't make our team. When we go to safety now, to me, this is kind of where you got to have range. You know, we were spoiled by Devin McCourty, who could do a lot of things on the field and get, you talk about leadership, get guys lined up. Xavier McKinney has made a difference for this Packer team. I mean, they've turned the ball over at a rapid rate. 6 interceptions. He's gotten them to have great communications. And the youngster, Brian Branch from Alabama, who's really been a good player for Detroit. So I think this is a really good group of players that complement our defensive front really well.
Yeah, so it's overall a very strong defensive unit here. I like all these guys. They're tough, they're physical, they're smart, they communicate well, and they make a lot of big plays in the running game and in the passing game. So really the key for the defense is 11 personnel versus 12 personnel, base defense versus nickel defense, and that's where the extra player comes in. Well, we've got 2 out of 3 done now on our All-Belichick team.
Right.
Next, of course, is special teams,
which is important.
No one's doing special teams, Coach, so I'm excited about this. We are going to get some special teams names out there. Okay, Coach, we got the board going here. We went through the All-Belichick midseason. Defensive players are up there. We got the offensive players up here. A couple of reserves over here just in case we need them. We'll see how that plays out. But we got to get to the third phase here, the most important phase, special teams.
If we move over to the board here on special teams really starts with the punt team. You need players that can play on the punt team, that can protect, that can cover, and that's where most of your plays come from. Sure, you need to do punt return, and sure, you need to do kickoff and kickoff return, although if you have a good kicker, you can minimize that as well. But the punt team's where it all starts. So a player really can't be a core special teams player unless he can play on the punt team. And so that's divided into really two things: the speed players, the gunners, and normally the personal protector, and then the interior players. It's different body types because they have to protect against bigger players inside, whereas the gunners can just go. So we've broken that down and put the players in there that we feel like have been very productive and would be good all-around players, not just on the punt team, but they have to be able to play on the punt team in order to be on our special team. So, Matt, why don't you start with the interior players?
Yeah, the inside guys, one of the things that's most important, obviously, protection. We're getting a lot of punt rush this year, and they got to make sure that they can kick back, get the ball off, make sure that we can punt. So really, Nick Ballora, great player, a veteran, smart, all the, things that you're looking for. He can pull that unit together, get things problem solved on the field. But Christian Ellis on the other side, another really good guard. You want good, strong guards inside to help your snapper. Obviously, the long snapper is a key guy. We got to get the timing of the play, but hold those A-gaps off as he's trying to get his head back up in protection. So Nick Ballora, Christian Ellis, inside, starting with them. And then we move to the tackle position. Chris Board, obviously, outside. Orgy on the other side over there. Two solid players, on the edge where we're getting a lot of different games. Being stout inside, but then they got to go cover. They got to be able to run downfield, and they got to be able to tackle, get to the returners, make sure we're spreading out on the field, have speed. It's kind of a combination of all those things starting there. And then we're just going to throw a backup in there, too. Jalen Reeves-Maven, another guy that we're familiar with. He can actually play PP. He can do all the different spots, play slot. But really good, solid unit up front. Guys that can protect, help the specialists, get out, cover, and get them down when they get there.
Yeah, you really need speed at these tackle positions because if the slots can't get out because of a heavy rush, then they need to be the contained guy. And Board's very good at that. Orgy is really good kickoff coverage player. Most of his production has actually come on kickoff coverage, but he's got to play on the punt team too, so there he is. So a pretty good interior group. Next, Mike, we'll move to the slots and the PPs.
And that's an important position. You mentioned before they've got to be able to hang in there and they've got to have size, but more than anything, the slot's got to have speed to get down there. Kennebrews been a great special team player since he was in college. He's been really good, whether it's Detroit now in Pittsburgh. Phillips is another guy that's a great open field tackle, plays with strength. The most important guy here is the personal protector because he's making the line call, he's making the checks, making sure everything's lined up. And typically he never gets blocked. So he can track to the football. So he's got to have speed, he's got to have great instincts, understand where the ball's going, not get fooled, and then be a really good open field tackler. So those are the critical ones. And as a personnel guy, you always want to know who was the best personal protectors in the league because they got everybody lined up, they made everybody make the right call, but then they also made great tackles in the open field.
Yeah, I think the thing that sets Reeves apart from a lot of other guys is his ability to cover. He's really like having another gunner out there.
Right.
This guy's fast, and he can get down the field and really becomes the third gunner. And as you said, it's a hard guy for the punt return team to block because of all the traffic inside there. Killebrew, probably one of the best punt blockers in the league, so sure, he can play on the punt team, but he can also give you plays on the punt return team, as can Board. So, these guys have a lot going for them, not just their ability to play on the punt team, but that's very critical. And then speed players outside. Schooler, who's a former PP, so it gives you some idea of his flexibility. J.T. Gray has been a productive player ever since he came in the league. He's a great player. And one guy I think it deserves a little bit of extra attention is Hodge. Hodge is a leading special teams tackler at Atlanta, but then in the Thursday night game against Tampa, where a couple receivers get hurt, he goes in, catches a 45-yard touchdown pass to win the game. And so not only did he help the Falcons in a kicking game, he's their leading tackler, but when they needed him to play receiver, he won the game for him. Yeah. So this is really important to have guys that can not only play in a kicking game, but can also give you depth on defense. And I think he deserves a special mention because he stepped up and helped them win a game.
Take us through when you decided to put Lawrence Taylor as a gunner, because the gunner position back in that day wasn't exactly thought of as the way we think of them today. But what was your motivation, obviously, besides being a great player, and how fearful would you have to be knowing Taylor's coming at you down the field with all his speed and power? I mean, what made you make that decision when he was playing?
First of all, he's very fast. He ran 4.5, so he could get down there. And, of course, holding him at the line of scrimmage was almost impossible. So he put a lot of pressure on the returners. And, if we needed a good coverage player, we had Jennings, who was a really good punter. He could change the field position. But when we played the Eagles in the playoffs, we went up against Wally Henry. And right. Wally Henry's thing was he wouldn't fair catch. And he didn't. He fumbled. He fumbled twice when Lawrence went down there and covered on him because LT was right on top of him and coughed the ball up. And so that was really a good strategy, and we could see that was a huge problem. Unfortunately, the Redskins also saw that. Yeah. And in succeeding years, they put Dexter Manley out there. And Dexter Manley was just as much of a problem as Lawrence Taylor was. But it was good while it lasted.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was fun to watch. And you talk about the returners, that's where we'll go next. And Dallas has a guy, Turpin, who can do both. He can do kickoffs and he can do punts. And he's dynamic with the ball in his hands. I mean, you do not want to tackle him. He's explosive. You can't kick it down the middle. Your pet peeve.
Like Cleveland did.
And he's going to take it to the house. Plus, he's a great kickoff return guy, too. And, to me, there's a lot of good players here. Raymond from Detroit's a good player. Marcus Jones brought one back the other day. Matt Shaheed is injured. He's on injured reserve right now, but he could do both at one time too. He was really dynamic. But Turpin, to me, that would be a rule. We're not kicking the ball to Turpin.
Yeah, absolutely. Or kick it straight up in the air.
Or kick it straight up in the air.
That's right. These guys are really dangerous, and we saw what Turpin also is used as a little bit of a gadget guy on offense, so he obviously brings a lot of speed, and Shaheed, same thing for New Orleans when he was healthy. So those two guys are really tough to handle.
Those guys are changing field position. They're dynamic. You got to spend time on them during the course of the week to make sure your coverage unit has them handled. When you got a big player there or a great player there, it changes a lot during the course of the week of what you're going to do special teams wise. So, we got to have a good punter. We got to be able to change field position with him. And look, we got two guys really listed up here that are having great years. Cole with the Raiders doing a good job getting the ball downfield. He's really winning that field position game for them. And Dixon at Seattle, too, another guy that is able to kind of change field position. So, that's a big part of the punt team. Obviously, the protection first, but we've got to be able to get the ball. We've got to exchange the field position. And then also there's a lot of plus 50 punts this year. A lot of balls that are being kicked from midfield just with all the different rules. And that's another part of the game that's really, you can get a big advantage because if you can pin them in there, work with the gunners, get everybody pinned down inside that 10, 5-yard line, well, defense comes out, plays well. That's 3 points going the other way. So that's almost like points on the board. That's why that position is so important.
Yeah, and can't really be on this team unless you're a good holder because we need the holding for the kickers. And the kickers, there's so many guys having a good year. We look at all the long field goals made this year, game-winning field goals. These guys are kicking the ball great. So we could probably put half the league up here. Fairbairn, Butker, Folk, all having really good years. Boswell's having a great year for Pittsburgh. I think Aubrey, great year, but also his range. It seems like he can kick the ball from his own 30-yard line. It's unbelievable. So they're in field goal range as soon as they get anywhere near the 50-yard line. I think he's really a weapon and shortens the field. But not to take anything away from these other guys, like they've all been really good. This is probably one of the strongest positions on the entire board throughout the league. But there's some guys to talk about. So
those points are important. And one of the things Aubrey this year, obviously when they play at home, kicking inside, it's unbelievable his leg strength and how he can make them. But he's made some outside too that he's really been unbelievable. So.
If you don't have a 50-yard kicker, you're really at a disadvantage now. You really are. If you don't have somebody who can make him from 50 yards out, you're going to lose points quickly. There's no doubt. You need one of those guys. And I've never seen so many great kickers in the league. They're all coming back, and you can't give up on the kicker too early.
No, and if you have a good kickoff returner, he can take him out of the game.
That's right.
Just touch back it, and we don't let the ball get into Turpin's hands, Shaheed's hands, Chenault, whoever. If there's a good kickoff returner, this guy can neutralize them. Really important position, but I would say that I will go with Aubrey just because of his overall leg strength, kickoff ability, and this guy's been fantastic.
Yeah,
so
really has.
There it is. Pretty good looking special teams. Nobody really talks about the guys that are core special team players, but we all know how important they are. And again, it's not just what they do in the kicking game. Also, some of these guys have a lot of versatility. They can play multiple spots. So if something happens, somebody else can go in and they can do the hard job and move. And some of these guys have made big plays on offense too. And again, notably Hodge is an example of guys that not only give you depth on the kicking game, but also can help you offensively or defensively in a pinch, and that's invaluable to win football games.
You know, special teams, smart football players, tough football players, play with good fundamentals, and these guys got to be smart, to your point, Coach, to be able to have those backup roles because they're going to be active for game day, and they might have to go out there offense and defensively. Smart, tough, good fundamentals. That's a pretty good-looking team.
Yeah, I like it. Now that we have our All-Belichick team for the midway point of the season, we can talk about the next step. We're not going to do most valuable players, although I think if we did that, it would be Lawrence and Lamar Jackson. But that's not really our thing, so we'll skip over that. But one thing that is important is leadership.
Right.
And leadership from the players, both on and off the field. Normally, we would elect captains, but since we can't do that, we'll just appoint them. So our captains have to be guys that are not only good players, obviously, but also give us great leadership. Offensively, Michael, who do you have?
We're going to start with Lamar Jackson. I think he demonstrates great leadership. It's quiet leadership. You know, you don't have to be a vocal leader. You can do it by your actions, and I think Lamar does that really well. You could see the team responds to him, and his level of performance week in and week out is sensational. You could see that he's well prepared for the game. And once the game starts, he does things that very few human beings can do on the field. It's really remarkable. So his leadership, to me, is what sets the tone for the offense. You
know, he's really done a good job this year. There have been several games where you feel like they're pretty much done. But he keeps fighting, and at the end of the game, they have a chance.
Yeah, they're a toe away from beating Kansas City. They're throwing the end zone against Cleveland last week, and then
drop ball
in the Raiders game. I mean, they had a chance in that game. The Raiders came storming back. The defense didn't play well. So yeah, and I think to me this offense is going to continue to improve because you could see Lamar has that one trait that we all value more than anything. They're not satisfied. They want more. They want to try to get better. They want to try to achieve more, and I think you see that out of his performance.
Well, I love the choice of Lamar Jackson. He's got my vote, which counts for something. How about on defense, Matt?
Well, when we're talking leadership, smart, tough, dependable, a guy that can turn the game at any point, it's going to be Fred Warner. You know, he's our captain on defense. He'll be the signal caller. I think he's really one of those guys that can transcend the different units, whether it's offense, defense, special teams, and get the team going. He turns the ball over. He's probably one of the most valuable players throughout the entire league on defense. This guy's special. I love everything. He embodies what we want on defense, the toughness. I think he'll lead our team. It'd be great to be Fred Warner.
Yeah, and on special teams, it'll be Nick Bellore. Nick came into the league in 2011. He has over 160 special teams tackles. Once again, he leads the league in special teams tackles this year, halfway through the season, tied with J.T. Gray, who's another great player.
Yep.
But Nick really embodies what we're looking for in the kicking game. He embraces his role. He's ready to do whatever you need, fullback, linebacker, whatever it is. But he's a great special teams player. He's very, very productive. He knows what his role is, and he shows up and does it every week. He's having a great career, and those three guys give us great leadership, and we're really looking forward to continuing this process next week.
Yeah, this is going to be a great team. I don't know who's going to play this team. I'm just telling you right now. I don't know what they're going to do there. But, we're going to come back next week, and we're going to take this same model, this same approach, but we're going to talk about rookies, second-year players,
coaches and front office, and go through all the things that have happened in the offseason that allowed these teams to really make vast improvements. So come back next week here on Coach. Make sure you like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We'll see you next week.